So let's work on another way of organizing and importing our objects and materials. This time we'll be thinking about using an external application like Quixel Studio or Substance Painter. And these are great applications that allow you to do PBR texturing or physical-based rendering that allows you to create textures based on real-world settings and lighting. So all of the processes that we've already looked at regarding grouping or creating materials, exporting your object out to Unity, all of those things apply. So we could export a single FBX with multiple objects and a material for each object to, say, Substance Painter and work with it there. We could also export out a single object with multiple materials, and Substance Painter would see those separate materials just the way Unity does. And then you could work with those individual materials in texturing. But in addition, you can also use something called color ID or vertex colors. So you can assign vertex colors to your object, different colors for each material. And then that external application like Quixel or Substance Painter is going to see that color ID, those individual vertex colors, as individual materials. So in Blender, you give your object one material, but then you apply different vertex colors to it, and in Substance Painter, it sees it as multiple materials. So let's give that a try. I've got Substance Painter here, and this is what I'm going to use to bring that object, that Blender object with vertex colors in, just to show you the difference. Now, since the Blender object is going to be all one material, we're going to have all one UV map for it. What I'm going to do is create a lamp here, this kind of teardrop lamp, and the object that we'll be bringing into Substance Painter is this base piece, which I'm going to have be, say, porcelain here and maybe brass down there, and I'm going to use Substance Painter to give it kind of a worn, rusted look. However, this lampshade, I'm going to have to use a different material. At the very least, it could be a wholly separate object, so that when I take the whole thing as an FBX file into Blender, I can assign a specific material to the lampshade only and give it some emission so it looks like there's a light inside the lampshade. All right, so let's get to making this lamp here and see what we can do. So I'm going to go to a brand new layer. I'll go over to the Create tab and create a new cylinder. And instead of 32 signs, let's take it down to 12. And I don't want a cap fill on this, so I'll just change that to nothing. Let's scale it in the Z, S, and Z. Scale that down a bit. And I'll hit maybe 3 key and the 5 key and the period key to zoom in and go to an orthographic view. And it looks to me like this bottom edge here flares out just a little bit, so I'll scale that out some, maybe like that. And now let's begin working on the lamp proper. So this is the base here. I'll hit E and then scale it in just a bit. And then I'll begin extruding up, so I'll hit E and Z and pull it up some. And then I'll scale out a bit. And let's begin working on that teardrop shape there. I'll hit E and Z again, and let's bring it up and scale it out. And maybe EZ, and we'll just keep working our way up here. Let's see, does it need to go out some more? Can it begin to come in? How about something like that? EZ, and I can adjust these edge loops later as I need to, once I get the basic shape in. EZ, scale it in some, EZ, and scale it in some. So we've got the basic shape there of the lamp. It looks like I could maybe take this guy with Alt-click and take him up some, scale it in a bit, and I think I'll add just an edge right here and scale it out a bit there. So I get more of a flare out with that. There you go. Something like that. All right. I'll go ahead and create a little cap. So I'll just hit E and scale that out a smidge, and E and raise that up in the Z. something like that, and then close it off here. Doesn't need to be too elaborate up here. And to close that off, I'll press Alt-M to bring up the merge menu, and I'll merge those selected vertices at the center. And there we go. All right, so we've got that. We can always come over here and smooth this. I'm going to go to the Tools tab and hit Smooth. That'll smooth that out a bit so it isn't quite so blocky. And down here, I could come in here and choose these faces right here. Alt-click between two faces to choose that entire face loop. And I could come to the Shading UVs tab, and I'll flatten those out like that. Now that should give me a little bit more of an edge there at the bottom. Let's go ahead and create that lampshade now. I'll come back to perspective view for a minute with the 5 key, and I'm going to create a new cylinder. Once again, it's only got 12 sides, that's good, and no cap fill. I'll go back to the orthographic view with 3 and the 5 key, and let's bring this back up and scale that a bit. In the Z maybe. Oh, it could be a little bit wider, and then let's grab that edge up top here and scale that in a bit. Something like that. Yeah. Now, when we take this into the game, we're going to be able to see the inside of the lampshade, and the back of any polygon we're going to be able to see through. So we're going to want to give this a little bit of thickness so we can't see through it. So to do that, we can come over here to the Modifiers panel and choose Add Modifier, and we can use this Solidify modifier. And if we choose that, now I can grab this thickness field, click and drag on it, and you can see I can make it thicker on the inside here, something like that, I think. That'll work. Now if I hit Apply, there we go. You can see that we've got a bit of thickness to that now. Now there's a little seam on the top and the bottom. We could probably go ahead and just add a little bit of an edge up here and a little bit of an edge down here. I'm going to hit E and click, and now I want to scale out but not in the Z, so I'll press S to scale, Shift Z to turn off the Z axis, and just scale out just a bit. There we go. Same down here. Extrude, and then S and Shift Z. There we go. All right, so now what I can do is go ahead and smooth this. There we go. So now we need to UV map the whole thing. I think what I'll do is split it out by material, or what's going to be a different material. So if we go back to the UV editing screen layout, frame it up with the period key, and hit the tab key. Let's work on this part down here first. I think what I'll do is go ahead and put a seam right down here. Oh, let's go to edge mode, Alt click an edge, put a seam right down here. Let's put an edge right back here. Let's just say that this will be the back of the lamp. So I'll press Control E and mark seam again. I'll hit the A key to select everything, U for the UV mapping menu, and click Unwrap. Now notice that it's not looking quite the same as it does in the 3D view, and once again it's because we don't have the scale applied. So if I go back to the Properties panel, we can see that the scale is non-uniform. So I'll hit Control A, Scale, and then I'll go back to Edit mode and hit U and Unwrap, and now we see it's conforming to the shape and size of our object a little bit better. Now it's pulling quite a bit up here, which is pulling down here. I think what I'll do is go ahead and split it out at this point up here. I kind of put an extra edge up here. So I'll split that out here just to give it a little bit of room to breathe. U and Unwrap. There we go. That's a little bit better, we see there. Now, if we wanted to check how our UV map is going to look, to see whether or not the textures are going to be stretched on this, we can apply a UV test pattern to it just to see if there's any stretching. Now over here under display, you can also turn on stretch display, and anything that's blue is not stretched, and anything that moves towards orange, yellow, or red is stretched. So it appears we're doing pretty well here. However, if we wanted to really test it with a UV test pattern, we need to go ahead and apply our material here, or create a material. I'll select New in the Material panel. I'll call this Lamp Base. And in our UV image editor, I'm going to come down here and click New. And instead of a blank image that I'm creating here, I'm going to choose UV Grid, and that will generate a black and white texture pattern. I'll call this UV Test, and I'll click OK. And there is our UV test pattern. Now we can assign the test pattern texture to the lamp material. So I'll press Shift A, Texture, Image Texture, and let's pull down this little menu right here, and you can see it right in here. So now you can see here is our test pattern. And it doesn't look great. Of course, you can see that seam very clearly back there, but the good thing is we can put that seam away from the camera, away from the player, so it won't be seen. Let's go back into our UV map here, and I think what I'd like to do is just select this UV island and maybe rotate it a bit so it's more straight up and down here. And this one really doesn't matter much. That's going to be up inside the lamp. And this one here, I think it looks okay. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating really procedurally generated materials that are then applied as textures. So we don't need it to be as clean and straight as we might if we were, say, applying text to an object. I'm going to scale this up just a little bit to kind of maximize the screen space here, or the resolution. Yeah, something like that. All right, let's UV map the lampshade now. If I select the lampshade, let's just, well, it looks like we could split out the insides, I think. So let's do that. So a seam here and a seam down here. And then let's split it out in the same place that that other seam was, right down here. So Alt click that seam, and let's mark a seam there. Now let's take a look at how this looks. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'll go with that. We can switch from conformal to angle based. That to me looks even a little better. And we could apply a UV test pattern to this as well. I'll create the new material, call it lamp shade. And let's apply that UV test pattern to this as well, just to make sure we're doing all right. Not too bad. I think it'll work just fine, especially since these are just going to be kind of overall procedural type textures that don't have any text or specific patterns on them. So I think we'll be good with these. All right, so now let's go back to our default view. And what I'd like to do now is assign vertex colors to the parts of this object that are going to be separate materials. So we don't have a lot of different parts to this. Now this can be done for a much larger, more complex piece, but I just wanted to show you in terms of a very simple object. So let's go over to the Object Mode menu here, and let's switch from Object Mode to Vertex Paint. And here we have the Vertex Paint tools over here on the left. If I come over and change to, say, a blue color and click and drag, you can see I can create paint colors per vertex. Notice that it's painting just on individual vertices, and that's what Vertex Paint does. Now, to make my life a little easier, I could go through and paint this by hand like this, and we could get the job done, but that's a little tedious. So what I'm going to do is come down here to this little guy, this Face Selection Masking button, and click that. Now we've got faces that we can select and deselect. Now I'm going to deselect that with the A key, and I can press the L key and select the object or the part of the object that has been delineated by the seams. So I had a seam down here and I had a seam up here, and so it selected everything between the seams. So now with all of these faces selected, I can press Shift K and that will fill that whole area with that particular color. If I need to come back to that color, I can create a new palette. So I'm going to come down here and click New and then add this blue to my palette. So there it is. I can always come back to it now. The next one down here, let's fill with a different color. Let's say red. I'll hit A to deselect. I'll hover over this area and press the L key, and that will select all of those faces. And then I'll press Shift K, and that will fill that area up with that color. Let's go ahead and capture that color in case we need to use it again. And what about up here? Let's do this one too. Maybe this is a different kind of metal than the one on the base. Maybe this is a silver or a stainless steel thing. I don't know. I'm going to hit the L key and let's give this one a green color like here. I'll press Shift K and I'll also save that just in case I want to use it again. So there we have the vertex colors assigned to our object. So now these vertex colors can be seen by a program like Substance Painter, and it will assume that your different colors are what you want to be different materials. So let's go back to object mode here. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I've got everything named properly. Let me look at my materials. I've got lamp base for that and lampshade for that. Good. Do I have that in the object as well? No, I don't. So let me copy the material and put it in the name of the object. And let's go to the lamp base. Same thing here. Let me copy the material name and put it in the name of the object. Excellent. Now we have our lamp. Let me make sure that we are here with uniform scale. We don't have that for the lampshade. Let's go ahead and hit Control A and scale. Let's put the center or the pivot point of the lampshade at the base of the lamp. Set origin to 3D cursor. Let's make sure that's done for this as well. Set origin to 3D cursor. That can just help us snap objects easier once we get it into Unity, because the pivot point from Blender is going to be the pivot point in Unity. All right, let's bring everything else back. Holy smokes, look at that. And let's scale these down. I'm going to select lampshade and scale them down. So we're going to have to reapply our scale here, aren't we? I forgot about that. Let's put this up on the table. Frame it up with the period key. And let's see if we can get it so it looks about right. So the scale of the object is okay. What do you think? Is that... It feels a little big. Maybe I'll bring it down just a little bit. Something like that. All right, so now let's go ahead and apply the scale of both of these objects. Control A, scale, good. Let's now go ahead and import these objects. Now, I haven't imported yet the in table here. I just kind of created this in table based on the coffee table. So I haven't imported that yet either. Let me make sure that the name is good, in table. I'm using the same materials for the in table, and I'll use the same texture too, at least for now. But let's take this object right here as an FBX into Substance Painter and see what it makes of it.